Well, hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Thursday, August 29th, 2024. It's the 242nd day of the year, the 35th Thursday, and a rare day that there's nothing really of significance to celebrate on the calendar of made-up holidays. There is a ton of news, though, and we have a lot of ground to cover. A couple of big business headlines that I want to get to as well. But it is the day that many people have been looking forward to for some time. We didn't know that it would be this actual day, but for about 38 days to be exact, people have been looking forward to Vice President Harris, the Democrats' presidential nominee, to finally give a sit-down interview. And she will do it with her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and it'll be pre-taped. Let's start it off with Chris Salcedo.
As we told you yesterday, Kamala Harris is running a stealth campaign. She is emulating so-called men like Barack Obama and Joe Biden. She's doing the stealth campaign for the same reasons they did. She's hiding the fact she's unqualified. She's hiding her real agenda from the American people. And she's hiding from her demonstrated record of failure to contribute one positive thing to our people and our way of life. Kamala and CNN will make a campaign video, not conduct an interview. It's a reality check in today's preamble. Unlike the CNN debate, this Kamala Harris campaign stop at CNN, disguised as an interview, will be taped. That's right. CNN and the Democrats, one of the same, really, have agreed that the interview will not air live. I'm forced to wonder what the Vegas odds makers say the over-under is on how many edits CNN will make to the campaign video to make Kamala Harris appear presidential or at least competent. But there's another aspect of the interview that should confirm for all Americans that Kamala Harris is just as weak-minded and unqualified to be president as Joe Biden is. She will have Tim A. Walz holding her hand while she and CNN conduct this campaign video. The idea that a woman who is being marketed as proof that a woman can break the glass ceiling and do the job as well as a man can has to bring along a man as a security blanket reveals her candidacy to be every bit the joke we conservatives say it is. I can see the Oval Office call now. It's 3 a.m. and a crisis is unfolding. Kamala Harris answers the phone and is asked for a course of action. And she looks stoically out the window and yells, "Where's Timmy?" And speaking of the man Kamala Harris has to have in tow, here's a guy who's been lying about his resume almost as extensively as Joe Biden has all these years. With President Trump, you get none of this. You get a leader who knows what direction he wants to take the country, a direction that leads us back to liberty, back to security and prosperity. He's a man who can hold court with a biased press for hours and do it solo and do it live. President Trump won't be railroaded by the world's bad actors, as Harris will clearly be. But because President Trump is a leader who rejects totalitarian government control over our people, the leftists and the media have turned on him, something they will never do to Marxists like Kamala and Walz. CNN's pattycake session with Kamala and Timmy will be just another box to check. It will be another piece of propaganda for Democrats to say, see, she's not avoiding the press. Never mind, there's nothing resembling a journalist over there at CNN. Never mind the public knowing CNN's track record for covering up for Democrat treachery. And never mind that Kamala Harris is so insecure and unqualified that she couldn't do an interview without a proven left-wing sycophant, without backup. None of that will matter, as the Democrats will have their talking point. And for most uninquisitive, uneducated, and uninformed Democrat voters, that will be enough. The only good news for the United States is that the majority of Americans are not Democrat voters.
That's Chris Salcedo, host of the Chris Salcedo Show, 4 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. Reporter Christina Thompson took to the streets of New York City to see what some voters are thinking and saying about the vice president's campaign.
If you were a reporter and you were given the first exclusive sit down with Kamala Harris, what would your first question be?
What's your plan to bring down inflation?
What are we going to do about the inflation in New York City? Our salaries have stayed the same.
But food, gas, mortgages, everything's just going up.
She hasn't done a sit-down interview yet, so what's that? If you had that opportunity for that first question.
I'd be interested in how she's going to appeal to all demographics and age, I guess, because it's such a wide spectrum.
How you are going to inspire women voters.
Why is she just like everyone else? She started in on the other party and throwing them under the bus. And it's clear that other people tell her what to say.
What will you do about immigration? I agree with helping people, but we've got all these problems with people just coming over.
How would allowing illegal immigrants coming into our country, have you thought about how that's going to affect our future?
How that will affect legal citizens of America. You know, all these thousands of people come in every day and get stuff for free that they don't have to work for.
We want to know, what do you think about Israel? If she's actually going to do anything during this administration that she says she's going to do.
Yeah, do you know what you're doing?
That's probably my only question for her.
What are you going to do any different than anybody else did?
Do you know what you're actually doing? Do you understand you have a position that actually dictates people's lives? Let's fix this country. Maybe Trump could help.
A few obvious Trump supporters, several immigrants expressing concerns about immigration. That's interesting. And inflation, of course. Political analyst Mark Halperin and Democrat analyst Jason Nichols had a heated conversation about the upcoming interview on Newsline with Bianca De La Garza.
What's the strategy? Why do it like this?
Well, they want this to be more about vibes than about policy, and the two of them together can play off each other. We've seen as they've interviewed each other that they want to emphasize that rapport. It's a lot's going to be up to what agreement they've had with CNN and what Dana Bash chooses to do. Will she direct questions to Walz? Will he jump in? Will she have one-on-one time with Kamala Harris? I don't know the answers to any of those questions. But I think what the strategy is and whether it can be implemented will depend in part on how much she's able to be shielded by Walz as just being, as you said, diluting the time.
Yeah, Jason, shouldn't she just be in there by herself? She wants to be the leader of the free world. She's been pretty vocal. She was the last person in the room during the Afghanistan withdrawal. I mean, doesn't it show more strength if she was just to sit down by herself? After all, she's running for president.
Well, Bianca, I think a lot of people have very short memories. They forget that Paul Ryan sat for a joint interview with Mitt Romney, that Joe Biden sat for a joint interview with Barack Obama, that Mike Pence, remember that guy? He sat for a joint interview with Donald Trump. So this is not new. We know that they are selling both a ticket to the American people. We want to hear from J.D. Vance. We want to hear from Tim Walz. We want to hear from the top of those tickets as well.
Wait. Question from Mark Halperin. Okay, short memory, but maybe not. Mark, go ahead. Jump in.
Jason, I know you know that while the joint interview is a tradition, it usually comes after a long nominating process in which the presidential nominee does innumerable solo interviews. So I think you're comparing apples to armadillos in going to the past history of suggesting that this is normal, because this is not normal to have her first interview as the presidential candidate, not in the general or nomination, be diluted by having her running mate with her. It's just not normal.
And not only is it not normal, it may be also a problematic because people will say, well, now she's done one. She's done an interview, and that's still not normal. Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, over and over, taking questions. There are no guardrails. You can ask them anything, Jason. It just is different. And even you, as smart as you are, you have to admit that. It's not the same. Apples to armadillos or whatever you want to call it. She needs to get out there, and she needs to get out there with more than just CNN. I mean, many are calling Dana Bash somewhat of an apologist. She was on her show a few weeks ago, refuting the borders are, saying she wanted to clarify things. She's interviewed her before. I mean, come on. If she's really not afraid of it, then why not do more interviews?
So first of all, this is the first. We don't know what's going to happen next. We do know that you will hear directly from Kamala Harris at a debate on September 10th. I would agree that, things aren't apples to apples, and Mark has been in the game long enough to know that there's never been an apples to apples comparison when it comes to these sorts of things. And this might be the strangest or the most different of all campaigns that we've seen in our lifetime. So this idea that you're looking for apples to apples, I think is kind of out of the ordinary in and of itself. We're talking about short nominating process. We're talking about, about 70 days left. This has only been about 120 days that she's had altogether, and she just became the nominee. So again, as you said,
she didn't just become the nominee.
I say accepted at the convention. You were there, Bianca. We were there together.
I say with respect, you're the one who brought up the historical precedents, not me. I'm just saying
okay.
I don't think they apply. And I'll say it is different, but there's something that's immutable, which is the American people should understand the positions of someone who's trying to be president.
Political analysts Mark Halperin and Jason Nichols on Newsline with Bianca De La Garza. Jason Nichols is a regular member of the panel on Chris Plante's Right Squad. That's weeknights at 10 o'clock Eastern, along with Mercedes Schlapp. Definitely check that show out if you haven't seen it, The Right Squad. How about we get the perspective of another powerful female politician, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem.
Don't you just find it all very strange? This is a party that's all about optics. And the optics surrounding Kamala Harris are just way off here, Governor.
Oh, they're terrible. You know, looking at this from a woman's perspective, it's just so disappointing. There are all kinds of women who take on tough challenges in their day-to-day lives. They're balancing budgets. They're running businesses, raising their families. They've done difficult things. And then we have a woman who wants to be the leader of the free world, and she can't get through an interview without being propped up by a man. I mean, it's insulting. It really is. So I hope that everybody recognizes that Tim is there to help prop her up. And if it gets awkward or she starts giggling or looking, crazy, that he's going to interrupt and take over. And then they're going to go back and stop the tape and maybe retape that question to make sure that she looks fantastic. This has been something that they have been planning ever since, probably for months. And they know what their game is. I just hope the American people are strong enough and verbal enough and vote enough to call them out on it.
Governor, we're starting to put together the puzzle pieces here on this administration. The vice president, no fan of the First Amendment. He's on the record calling for attacks on the First Amendment. Then you have Kamala Harris and her economic policies, which many are calling straight out of the Soviet Union. I want to play some audio. This is President Trump on Kamala Harris and her policies.
Biden and Kamala and all of these people, they want it. I call her, I have different names, it's very interesting, very, very interesting. But there are so many names you can call her. But the most important name is she's a Marxist. That's her ideology. She wants to destroy our country.
Governor, you've had a chance to see what little we know about her policies. How would you categorize Kamala Harris?
Definitely some of the beliefs that she holds are Marxist. She believes a socialist regime in America would be better than what we have today. She doesn't recognize the blessings of the republic that our founders gave us. And she's spoken to this. I mean, she's given us enough on the record to know truly how radical she is and how far left she would take this country. And she picked the most extreme far-left governor that we've ever had in the history of this country. When you look at how Tim Walz has devastated his state and how he shut down his state, mandated vaccines and masks to them, took away their right to go to church, to even gather together as families over holidays. Then he raised taxes on them, took away their energy supply. We have, South Dakota has benefited from his bad policies because people have left Minnesota by the thousands and moved to our state. They brought their economic activity, and just last year, we had $1.2 billion worth of investment that came from Minnesota to South Dakota just because they couldn't stand to live with Tim anymore. So I don't know why we would trust these two to lead our country. They truly don't cherish it. They're trying to remake it.
South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem on the Todd Starnes Show. That airs 5 o'clock Eastern on N2. The other big political story today is the NPR story, or reaction to the NPR story about the Trump team's visit to Arlington National Cemetery, and this comment from J.D. Vance about Kamala Harris, who was reacting to the NPR story.
She won't even do an investigation into what happened, and she wants to yell at Donald Trump because he showed up. She can go to hell.
Now, remember, Trump was there honoring the 13 service members killed in the Afghanistan withdrawal. But as you would imagine, Vance's comment getting a lot of attention today. And Donald Trump also posted some negative or personal comments about Harris on Truth Social. This is exactly the kind of stuff that they have to stay away from. Exactly why the Harris team wants open mics at the debate, hoping they can say something to get Trump all riled up and that he'll say something he shouldn't say. The former president has a rally in Potterville, Michigan today. That's near the capital of Lansing. It's his third visit to Michigan in the past 9 days, his second in a week after his speech to the National Guard in Detroit back on Monday. That was where he got the big endorsement from former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who will be moderating a town hall today with Trump in La Crosse, Wisconsin. So first they're going to Michigan, then La Crosse, Wisconsin for a town hall moderated by Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's first visit back to Wisconsin since the Republican National Convention. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, I mentioned this yesterday, expected to headline a fundraising event for Trump in Atlanta today on the heels of the vice president's visit yesterday. Also, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will be involved in that event. Okay, this is really important too. Rob Schmitt spoke with Louisiana Senator John Kennedy about the Harris-Walz plan to tax unrealized gains, something that a lot of people just don't realize how big of a deal it is.
I want to talk for a minute about unrealized gains, taxing unrealized gains. And the reality that for Americans, that means that we have a government now that has grown so big, a government that has spent so much money, that we now have a political party that's trying to tax us on money we haven't even made yet. We have squandered so much wealth that we're now at this point.
Well, let's suppose I buy a stock at 10 and it goes to 20. On paper, I made $10 a share. But under our tax code, and I think under the Constitution, I can't be taxed on that $10 that I've made unless I sell the stock. I have to have what's called a realized gain. That means I have to sell. What the vice president wants to do is change the law and apparently change the Constitution to say that I'm taxed even if the stock goes up and I don't sell. Well, suppose at the end of the year, I'm taxed, even though I didn't sell on the $10 of the per share gain. Suppose the day after I pay my taxes, the thing goes down to 5. Do I get my money back and does the government pay me? I mean, it's basically a wealth tax.
Right.
And it hasn't worked anywhere. France tried it a number of years ago, and even the neo-socialist French government said, nope, it's not going to work. It's just a number of the anomalies in the vice president's tax plan. But the one thing the vice president hasn't addressed, Rob, that she needs to address, it's not going to go away. She and President Biden have created the worst inflation in 40 years for the American people, and she doesn't have a plan to get prices down. And I think that's her soft underbelly.
Louisiana Senator John Kennedy on Rob Schmitt tonight. Unrealized tax gains, a huge issue. Even the New York Times, CNN, and CNBC commentators all coming out against it. The Biden-Harris administration also got some bad news Wednesday when the Supreme Court rejected the administration's request to put most of their student debt relief back into effect. Not going to happen, at least not as of yet. Yesterday, I told you that special counsel Jack Smith filed a new indictment against former President Trump in the election interference case. This is Judge Andrew Napolitano on National Report.
By removing the official acts from the indictment and leaving the same allegations supported by personal, non-official behavior, the government believes it has avoided and evaded the problems that would have been caused by the Supreme Court's immunity decision. Now, the government actually did Donald Trump a favor. Here's the favor they did to him. By filing this, what we call superseding indictment, it guaranteed there can be no trial before Election Day. Judge Chutkan was ready to order a trial date before Election Day. She simply cannot do that now because of all the new issues that the court will have to address as a result of this new indictment. The government also surprisingly did Donald Trump another favor, and that is it has said he doesn't have to personally appear for his arraignment. In the federal system, the defendant must always be there for an arraignment. You are Donald Trump. Yes. You do understand the charge against you? Yes. Okay, you can go home. But by telling him we recognize he's running for president, he's out on the campaign trail, he doesn't have to appear. That's the second favor from an unexpected source.
Very interesting. Not to mention what we might anticipate with polls. Every time you charge Donald Trump with something, he seems to get more popular.
Newsmax host Emma Reckenberg with former New Jersey Superior Court Judge Andrew Napolitano. And we'll finish up with some must-hear commentary from Greg Kelly on unfortunate Republican news.
You know, even if Kamala Harris were intelligent and gifted, a gifted speaker or something like that, there's no way she could defend what has happened at the border. Joe Biden can't, she can't. If they were asked objective, real questions, it's indefensible. How about our loss in Afghanistan? No, they can't. This is part of the reason why they're hiding. These answers are beyond them, and they're not good at politics. They're not good at it. They have to be the monstrosity, the depravity at the White House. That is indefensible. And so is the crime wave that they have encouraged. The legalization, essentially, of shoplifting and this bogus conversation America's had about race. With all that stuff going on, it's totally indefensible. They're getting ready for their big interview tomorrow on CNN. Guess who might just be on the fence and thinking about endorsing Kamala Harris? George W. Bush. Remember that guy? Yeah. Word is he's contemplating an endorsement of Kamala Harris. There was a rumor during the DNC that there was some momentum that he was going to do it during the DNC. And now there's speculation that he might do it before the election at some point. What a disgrace. How dare he? After what he brought this country through and what we're going through right now, things that he doesn't have to deal with because he's rich and he's ensconced in a cocoon of comfort. The rest of us have to deal with this stuff. There are big signs that the Republican Party, I mean, the establishment, the Rhino, the country club set, are doing all they can to help Kamala. More than 200 Bush, McCain, Romney alums endorse Harris for president and criticize Trump, going out of their way to do this. And let's look at their endorsement of Harris. I mean, this is unnecessary. We jointly declare that we're voting for Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz this November. Abroad, Democratic movements will be irreparably jeopardized as Trump and his acolyte J.D. Vance kowtow to dictators like Vladimir Putin while turning their backs on our allies. We can't let that happen. You know, like they're not going to let it happen, right? They're not going to let it happen. 200 people from the swamp signed this letter. And remind you something, right? When people come together and sign letters when they're in the swamp, a couple of names are, well, not that noteworthy, but the titles are interesting. Let's put them up one by one, if you don't mind. 200 rhinos, and leading with the following. Christopher Barton, Director, National Security Council, Chief Counsel for the House Permanent Select Committee, Committee on Intelligence, George W. Bush Administration. What a swamp dweller, huh? I mean, this is textbook swamp. Jeffrey Bobeck, Director of External Affairs at the Department of Energy for George W. Bush. Thanks, Jeffrey. I'm surprised at this one. Daniel Connor, Presidential Helicopter for Marine One. Hey, fly the helicopter, and that's it. We don't want to hear this stuff. And Ann Dixon, intern. They had interns sign these letters. It does remind you, though, of the Hunter Biden. This is bogus, right? I mean, they don't know what they're talking about. These are swamp people in it for themselves. Yeah, remember the Hunter Biden laptop? Remember the 51 intelligence officials? Russia disinformation.
That is Greg Kelly, host of Greg Kelly Reports, weeknights at 9 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. There was a time that I really liked George Bush, even got a picture with him. He mentioned the 51 people that signed off on the Hunter Biden laptop Russia disinformation story. We covered that in depth yesterday. I should say Greta Van Susteren covered that in depth on yesterday's Newsmax Daily. And National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan wrapped up talks with China's President Xi in Beijing today. Both countries promoting unity and cooperation as a source of world peace. Sullivan says he addressed some aggressive behavior by the Chinese in the South China Sea.
And I reaffirm the United States' commitment
to our Indo-Pacific allies, including our concerns about destabilizing actions against lawful Philippine maritime operations in the South China Sea.
Jake Sullivan says he also spoke with the Chinese president about China's support for Russia in the war against Ukraine. All right, on to the business news. Talked about it, I think, every day, right? NVIDIA reported sales of more than $30 billion. That's for a quarter. $30 billion, which was more than double they had of the same quarter a year ago. And like I said yesterday, it was less than what analysts were hoping for. So somehow $30 billion is bad news, and NVIDIA stock is down this morning. However, the stock markets are sharply higher. I think it was all taken generally as good news, which is boosting the whole tech sector and the whole market, but it was sort of bad for NVIDIA because it wasn't as much as people were expecting. $30 billion in a few months. Also in the business headlines, an internal employee email from Lowe's, the home improvement store, was leaked out on X. Shows the company is making changes to its DEI initiatives amid pressure from conservative customers and dwindling sales. Lowe's stated in the email that it believes inclusion is not exclusion, but has opted to reevaluate its DEI policies after the Supreme Court ended affirmative action in college admissions last year. The CEO of Lowe's was even bold enough at one point in time to say, if you don't like our policies or stores, go to Home Depot. Well, apparently people listened. All right, keep up with all of the news all day on Newsmax, Newsmax 2, and Newsmax.com. Make sure you're streaming on Newsmax Plus for the most complete lineup of all your favorite shows and guests. Greg Kelly reports, Rob Schmitt Tonight, The Record with Greta Van Susteren, Carl Higbee, Bianca De La Garza, Wake Up America, and much more. NewsmaxPlus.com. Make sure you get signed up. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Enjoy the rest of your day and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Hey, it's Jerry Callahan from The Callahan Show. You can listen to us every day. We react to the latest news, politics, sports, and all the madness in the world. I'll give you my opinion with a little edge, a little attitude. I'm an unapologetic right-winger, trapped behind enemy lines in deep blue Boston, so I'm used to taking on the mainstream media mob. You can hear us anywhere you get your podcast, or you can listen every day at newsmax.com/listen.
It's our America. We conquered it. We built it. Great values like honesty and fairness. Great courage. A great nation needs a free press. Newsmax is it. 30 million Americans regularly go to Newsmax when they really need to know. They watch Newsmax TV at home. On the free Newsmax app, they go to Newsmax.com. Start today. Newsmax is real news for real people.